The Big 12 isn't better than the SEC at much of anything, except the number of quality quarterbacks in the league who I know are going to be quality quarterbacks. I mean, they lose in the recruiting battles, they lose in the on-field performance, number of national championship contenders, number of playoff contenders, number of bids that the league will get. I mean, they're behind, but yet somehow, some way, the Big 12 is the best quarterback conference in America. Did you know that there are eight guys who I can confidently say will be productive, above average, at least above average quarterbacks, and give you enough production from that position to help you win games? 8 guys in the Big 12. Let me read them to you right here. This is in no particular order. Shedeur Sanders, Noah Fifita, Jalen Daniels, good football player, kind of a veteran quarterback at this stage. Speaking of veteran quarterbacks, Cam Rising at Utah, remember him? He's back. KJ Jefferson, he's at UCF. They're a member of the Big 12, don't forget. Avery Johnson at Kansas State. Look, he's the most unproven of the bunch. I've got pretty high hopes for him. I think that his potential with Chris Kleiman and company is pretty immense. You've got Garrett Green back at West Virginia. Do you remember how many games the Mountaineers won last year? Maybe you should go look it up. And Baron Morton at Texas Tech, who I also believe in. And I've seen a larger sample size of those guys who are younger and less experienced than I have the younger, less experienced guys in the SEC. And that's one of the reasons I think that the Big 12 is the best quarterback conference in all of college football. And what that's going to lead to is the Big 12 being arguably the most entertaining conference in the country. Because I've argued this for a while as well. The Big 12 is not as top-heavy as the ACC. And in the quarterback realm, you can argue it's not as top-heavy either. There aren't as many NFL draft prospects in that group of guys that I just listed as there are in the SEC. No arguments there. But like the ACC, the depth is stronger. The questions are fewer about what you're going to get from that position. So if you look at the SEC, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, those guys are at the top. For my money, those are the 2 best quarterbacks in college football in the entire country. You got Brady Cook at Missouri. You have Jalen Milroe at Alabama, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. That's a very good quarterback league. Make no mistake about it. And then after that, you go to some big-time names in the SEC school-wise and some big brands and teams that have high hopes, and they're pinning them on young guys. Whether that's Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU. I mean, these are guys who are going to play pivotal roles, not just for their teams, but in the SEC title picture. Each one of those teams I just listed have SEC title aspirations. And if they don't get enough from the quarterback position, well, someone else is going to beat you. Because between Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, or Jalen Milroe, one of those guys is going to be playing in the SEC title game. There is no world in which Georgia, Alabama, and Texas are all left out of the SEC championship game. It's just not going to happen. So if you want to be at that sort of level and you're a fan of an SEC team, you know what you have to expect? You know what you have to get from the quarterback position? You have to be able to get above average play. It doesn't have to be Heisman level. It doesn't have to be at the level of a Carson Beck or a Quinn Ewers when those guys are at the top of their games. But you can't have a sizable gap right there. So I see a lot more questions with guys as you go down the list in the SEC. And I think the SEC, best conference in America, I think it's going to be a good quarterback league. It is a good quarterback league. It is clearly number 2. But the Big 12 to me is number 1. And that's what makes the Big 12 a really, really fun league for 2024. The competitive depth and balance. You have the longest title odds for a betting favorite in that conference of all the Power 4 leagues. They're all plus 300 or worse. You've got a plus 200 or even a plus 100 in that sort of range in every other conference. In the ACC, you have Florida State and Clemson under plus 300. In the SEC, Georgia is a pretty sizable favorite over there. In the Big Ten, you've got both Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State is less than plus 200 as a conference favorite. And for those who understand how the betting market and everything works, that's a pretty sizable amount of confidence that Vegas has got in the Buckeyes there. And guess what? They've earned it. They've earned it. Talked about the quarterback questions that they have on yesterday's show. But one of the reasons I think you can look at Ohio State and Oregon in the Big Ten and say, hey, we feel really good about these guys as the two favorites going into this year, they've got the fewest quarterback questions. Drew Aller at Penn State, good football player, good quarterback. There's a legitimate question there. Can he take that next step? Can they push the ball down the field consistently? They've brought in a new offensive coordinator. They bring in Julian Fleming from Ohio State to, in theory, help out with all that sort of stuff. But we don't know how that's going to play out. That's not a proven commodity. That's a question, not a doubt, but a question. A very important distinction to make here to avoid pissing people off in the comment section. So I think that for Ohio State and Oregon, they have the two surest commodities at quarterback. You've got Dylan Gabriel, who is one of the most experienced players in the history of college football and was very good for Oklahoma last year, led him to a 10-win season. I think he's got an even better team that he's working with at Oregon. You have Will Howard, probably going to be the starter at Ohio State. He's an Ohio State quarterback. Of course he's going to produce. Of course he's going to be good. And then after that, in the Big Ten, you have Drew Aller, and you might have Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. I'm not kidding. There is a world in which either true freshman Dylan Raiola or essentially a freshman Aiden Childs at Michigan State, one of those guys could be the fourth best quarterback in the conference. Would that be the case in the Big 12? No, because there's too much veteran experience there. You look at what Shedeur Sanders did last year. His numbers, listen to this. ESPN put together their list of top 10 quarterbacks. I think Shedeur Sanders is too low. He's at number 8. I'd have him higher. Okay, listen to these numbers last year. 3,200 passing yards, 27 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. He only had a quarterback rating of 63.1. Do you know why his quarterback rating wasn't higher? The fact that he only threw 3 interceptions is nothing short of a miracle, because that's one of the worst Power 5 offensive lines in recent memory. They were so overwhelmed against any team that had a competent front. Go watch the Oregon game, the UCLA game. UCLA was a 7-5 team last year with a mediocre to below average offense and a really good defense. And they had a great defensive front. They won that game against Colorado solely on the back of their front four. Shedeur Sanders had no time to throw. And they've revamped the offensive line. That's been a huge point of emphasis for Shedeur Sanders, or for Deion Sanders rather, and the Buffs this offseason, as it should be. But if those are the numbers that he puts up with no offensive line, what's going to happen when he has just an average unit up there? You tell me. If they execute in that area, he's going to put up crazy good numbers because he's got a really good receiving core. Yeah, you know about Travis Hunter, but they've got other guys in there. It's going to be very, very interesting to watch. But the Big 12, I think this is just going to be a wildly entertaining conference. And it certainly won't all be about the playoff, right? A lot of fan bases are going to have that, kind of eye towards the future and what are the implications. I'm sure I'll talk about them here on the show. But is there a national championship winning team in the Big 12? No, I don't think so. Does that stop the Big 12 from being the most entertaining league? No, I don't think it does. Because when you have this quality of quarterback play, you get what the Pac-12 had last year, which was an incredibly entertaining league, and Washington rose above the rest. You know why? Because they had the best quarterback. And Caleb Williams is the best NFL quarterback, but last year, Michael Penix was better. He was in New York City. So was Bo Nix. Caleb Williams was not. So I think that for the Big 12, with the new teams they have brought in, right? Shedeur Sanders at Colorado, Noah Fifita at Arizona. You could see a young guy like Jaden Rashada down at Arizona State with Kenny Dillingham maybe pop this year. You set up a year in which you are going to have the most Big 12 year of all Big 12 years. I haven't even mentioned every quarterback in the conference that'll be good or that'll start. I'm sure people in the comment section will let me know, you're sleeping on this guy and that guy. I very well could be. These are just the guys who in my head stand out as, yep, those guys are going to give you above average quarterback play, and I feel very confident in saying that. There are not a lot of leagues that go 8 deep in that realm. It doesn't happen very often. The Pac-12 did it last year, and guess what? The Pac-12 was very entertaining, went out with a bang. And I think the Big 12, led by these great veteran quarterbacks with some really good coaches, are going to put on one heck of a show in 2024. None of them will be hoisting a national championship trophy when the season comes to a close. But in the lead up towards getting the Big 12's de facto automatic college football playoff berth, it is going to be really fun to watch. And I think there are a lot of different teams that can make a push, and the balance and depth of quarterbacks, it's a big reason why. Josh Pate thinks the looming transfer portal window is going to be the craziest we've ever seen. What does that mean?